Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Crimson Crossover podcast presented by the Field of 68 and J&J Apparel. I'm your host, Christian Sykes, joined as always by Charles Branch and Joey Blackwell. How you guys doing today?
Doing all right. Glad to be recording on a Tuesday, and I know we have a lot to break down since we last talked to everybody. So looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, feeling a lot better than the last time we recorded. Just about this team, and we knew this team had a lot in front of them. Uh, Great performance in Chapel Hill. Kind of unfortunate that you have that performance and you go 10 days before your next game, which will finally be in Tuscaloosa after a month off. But yeah, just huge. It was a huge win, and I know we'll break it down more in a little bit, but feeling really, really good about where we are right now.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that we do have to wait 10 days, especially everything that have evolved off the court, not only recruiting wise, but Alabama football. It seems like fans are getting a little bit stir crazy, waiting for some good things to happen for Alabama athletics. But before we get into the North Carolina breakdown, which was a great game, I had a chance to attend. We'll talk about that. I did want to talk about the news that did come out today, which is Aj Dybansta um, ultimately, I think, went to BYU, which is what everyone kind of expected. Um, for Alabama, it doesn't really change much on the recruiting trail. Uh, they've already got their class of three. Is there people later in the recruiting cycle that they might go after on a high school level? Potentially, I don't know of any names. Um, do they hit the portal hard? Absolutely. I kind of did some calculating, not calculating, but just looking at the roster numbers, Alabama's going to potentially have eight or nine guys that do go or ultimately might not be with the team next year. You're talking LeBaron Philem's probably going to go to the draft. He's being mocked in the early 20s. Darian Reed is kind of moving up draft boards a little bit. You might have Jaron Stevenson go to the draft if he continues to play and improve like he has been doing. And then obviously you have guys like Chris Youngblood, Mark Sears, Houston Millette, Grant Nelson, Cliff Amori. All of those guys are seniors. So just right there, though, that's what, seven guys. And then I would have an expectation of probably one or two transfers just because that's the nature of or basketball in 2024. So you're going to have eight or nine spots, I believe, that are going to end up being open. So for Alabama, they've already filled three with those signees that they have. And they're either going to fill the rest of them with transfer people or late additions or reclassifications. So from that standpoint or roster building standpoint, it doesn't really affect it that much. I did want to talk about kind of how everything went down with AJ. I posted a tweet earlier where I was saying essentially because of AJ signing early to BYU about 3 weeks ago, um, I said something about how it should be illegal and they should have to be required to notify teams that their recruitment's basically done. Um, Not that it's anything that's ever going to come from it, but I did talk to a few people, and apparently there's some type of rule or lack of rule that got implemented this year where the a commit doesn't have to sign their NIL or NLI. They only have to sign financial aid agreements, and they don't get reported to this portal or whatever that they have for um, I guess, putting in a player for said school that other schools can look up. Um, and ultimately, that's what happened. Um, it would kind of be on the players' families to then be responsible enough to notify other recruiting schools to, you know, that their recruitment shut down. Ultimately, that didn't happen. Um, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Not really. It's just kind of a, you know, not nice thing to do, I guess is what I would say. More moral ambiguity as far as whether or not you should do that, but ultimately it is what it is. Again, it wasn't an expectation that he was coming to the class, and I wish they got the kid well. Um, what are your guys' thoughts on the recruitment and kind of everything that went down?
First and foremost, I'd like to kind of reiterate that none of that was said to try to besmirch AJ at all. Just putting that out there. I don't have any hard feelings. I know Christian, you don't, or Charles. That's just this day and age in college recruiting and all that stuff. That's just how it goes. Um, I think ultimately you know, this doesn't really impact Alabama's class at all. We all know first off that Nate Oates really likes to go get talent from the portal. Then we still have a ways to go before we're looking at that. When it comes also to recruiting freshmen, even though I know a lot of Alabama fans will probably might sting a little bit that we didn't get AJ. At the same time, it looks really good for your program if you're in the spotlight for that long of a period of time. If you make a player like AJ's top four, and you're able to kind of circulate and be constantly mentioned, on even on ESPN and other outlets about how you're in the contention for this top player, that makes your program look good. That makes your recruiting look strong, and that's ultimately what a lot of athletes look for. They look for. Sorry, I'm trying to think of how to word this. They talk to recruiters and obviously they can talk about the program so much, but having those outside sources also talk up a program and have that constantly in the spotlight, even if you don't get the player, I think it's ultimately a good thing. Sorry, I know I rambled on that, but yeah, Charles, what about you?
I had to look it up. More than likely, AJ will be the fifth highest basketball player. Have the fifth highest, not salary, but fifth highest paid basketball player in the state of Utah next year. The four players in front of him all play for the Utah Jazz. One of those being Colin Sexton, so roll tide to that. Um, what I think is just interesting with this is it's reported that his NIL package will be $7 million. What Coach Oates and what we want as Alabama fans is to have a basketball program, not just a flash in the pan. So being smart about your NIL money, I think that's what a lot of programs are figuring out right now too. Like we don't think there's just going to be unlimited resources for all these programs. Texas A&M from a football standpoint, I feel like is kind of going through that right now where they had a lot of resources and it didn't work out with those players and it didn't work out with Jimbo Fisher. They get rid of Fisher, they bring in Mike Elko and maybe rein in just a little bit of their spending as it relates to players. For a program like BYU, who's got a brand new head coach with Mark Pope going to Kentucky, and for a hometown product as well, like, yeah, they can go out and, make this investment and see how it pays off for them, within 1 year. Do I expect BYU's NIL budget to be more than $7 million in the following years after AJ? No, I don't. I think it'll come back down. And I think for Alabama fans or just the Alabama program, you don't have it now out there that you paid one basketball player $7 million that kind of sets the market. So if you want to go get top talent in the future, you're not shooting against what you paid for somebody else to go get that top talent. And look, diversifying your assets through multiple players in this NIL era is what you want. You don't want just one good player. You want multiple good players. So I think that's just will be an interesting case study as it relates to NIL when next year, when you see how good BYU is with one player that's possibly even making more money than his head coach is,
He
which,
is 4 million
yeah,
more.
and just how all that will kind of play out. But look, he's obviously very good at his craft. Congratulations to him for his craft earning him and his family that much money. Good luck to him in his future endeavors. We'll focus on our team this year, of course, and our team in the future. But look, at the end of the day, I think it's a good thing for Alabama that you're not paying one basketball player $7 million just to come to your program.
Well, and I'll say this: Alabama hasn't paid one basketball player even on this current roster, more than $1 million. No player on this roster is making more than $800,000 of Yay Alabama collective funds. Are they making more money with brand deals and things? Absolutely. Um, I don't know the specifics on those, but I do know from an NIL collective number, um, no players making more than $800,000. And I talked about this with a few people earlier today, and it's it's not that it's not that Alabama wouldn't be willing to pay more for those players or for a high school recruit like AJ, but think about it like this. Mark Sears, Cliff Amori, Grant Nelson. Those three guys are not making $1 million. What's that say to the guys that are on the roster next year? If you have a guy like AJ come in and you're, let's say, making, I'm not going to say we're going to pay, I would just put $7 million out there because that's not a number that we're going to pay. And let's say the guys on the roster like Mo Diabate, who's been here for 3 years and is on the roster, and you have this freshman coming in, and now all of a sudden this guy's making $7 million. I'm only making 250K. What does that say to those guys? Right? Oh, well, you could have been paying me this money this entire time or more money than I'm making right now. Why haven't you done that? Now you've slighted me. And then on top of that, what Charles said, BYU now has out there that they can pay guys $7 million a year. What about the next guy that wants to come? You just paid AJ $7 million. Maybe it's not a number one player, number one overall pick player, but maybe it's another 5-star, and they are only offering that guy $750K to come and play. Well, they're like, well, I'm a 5-star. You paid this guy $7 million. You should have paid me at least 2, right? And now you're in a cycle of trying to catch up with NIL funds, and it's not fiscally responsible. So, for people that are not Alabama fans that are listening to this, you'll listen to this and say, "Oh, these guys are coping. Oh, these guys are, just trying to justify this." And I mean, realistically, this makes sense. You don't want to pay one guy $7 million. You don't want to pay a guy more money than what your head coach is making. I think Kevin Young's making $4 million a year, or like $3.4 million a year. You're telling me now that the one player on your team is going to make double what the head coach is making. But yeah, I wish him well. Glad he got that money. I can guarantee you, if my son or daughter ever got that amount of money, I would tell them to go to that school as well. So, as far as next topics, let's talk about the North Carolina game, which, by the way, AJ's dad happened to go to that game. So just trying to, bring everything all together.
Nice segue, Christian.
Nice. I got to go to the game, and I'll say this for people that didn't get to go, and I know that you guys got it. The TV made that place seem louder than it was. It was not very loud whatsoever. I don't know if they have the student section mic'd. I don't know if there's mics down on the lower level, because I was up in the rafters with CM Newton, but I don't know. It was not loud. And also the North Carolina fans that I was around, and maybe it was just because, again, I was up with CM Newton up in the rafters, but they were yelling for some fouls that didn't exist. This one time, this lady yelled that it was how the F is that an offensive foul when they were playing defense. I was really confused. I was really confused at what was going on. But it was a fun environment. It was nice to see that Alabama got to clear out the Dean Dome with 6 minutes to go in the game. Unfortunately, I wish North Carolina was a little bit better. I have a lot of questions about that team. I have a lot of questions about that team, and I think that for Alabama, I think it was a good game to get under their belt, winning by 15 in North Carolina. You see a lot from LeBaron Filan. I think Jaron Stevenson, who, by the way, is 7 of 10 in his last 2 games from three, um, played really well. Aiden Holloway went 5 of 9. Just all in all, I think it was a good wake up game, and I think Mark Sears did a really good job of attacking the basket. He was 7 for 7 um, in 2 point shots. So, what were your guys' thoughts on the North Carolina game?
Yeah, I mentioned this in our group chat right after the game. Um, it was a really interesting game to watch for obviously a lot of reasons, but particularly from the standpoint of it felt like we were watching like North Carolina was Alabama. Like we were watching our team play against Alabama. And what I mean by that is that Alabama in the negative way, and then all the issues that Alabama has had so far this season. Um, I think North Carolina had they what was it? They had 13 turnovers on the night. Um, they and then they just ultimately their shooting wasn't great. They shot 18% from beyond the arc. They were missing free throws. They were just 63% from the free throw line. All issues that Alabama has had over the course of this season so far. Whereas watching Alabama, it's like it wasn't perfect basketball. There was still a lot of issues, but they played some really, really solid basketball compared to how they had been the past week or so. 49% from the field, 36% from beyond the arc, 14 turnovers. I wished that number needs to go down. We also need to be better at converting our opponent's turnovers into points. We only got 9 points off of their 13 turnovers. That number has to get up, especially when you're going to be. Fortunately, this game wasn't necessarily a tight one, but in games that are going to be tight, which there's a lot of those that are coming up, we need to get that margin better. Um, Total rebounds, we were out rebounded 42-40, but having 40 rebounds, particularly 32 of those on the defensive end of the floor, just overall a really, really solid effort. Speaking of the word effort, I think that's probably the best effort we've seen all year. Which, especially when you think about also with Reitzel being out and Millette having to come in, you would expect effort, but maybe not necessarily to that extent. While the team, I mean, effort's going to be there, but what I mean is the chemistry of the players together might not be quite as good as it would be if Reitzel's still in. But to have that chemistry and then combine that with that effort, it was overall a really good performance, I thought.
Clearly, North Carolina does not have anybody in the front court. And I think we kind of knew that going into the game, talking with Riley, that it was going to be a guard battle between RJ Davis and Sears and Cadeau and Holloway and Philon and all those guys. I was really impressed at the beginning of the game that Mark Sears took the ball to the rim and scored at the rim. He did have a pull-up three in transition that maybe would have been a little bit ill-advised just with how he has been shooting the ball, but he really made a concerted effort to get to the rim, and that's how we started building our lead in the first half. So I was really impressed with his ability to get to the rim. I was also impressed with just the team as a whole, that anytime North Carolina had any type of run, first half, second half, we either got a shot at the rim or we got a really good pate touch from a drive that had a guard kicking it out to a shooter that was wide open for three. And the pass hit them where they needed to in the shooting position to not have to, move or anything like that. They could catch and shoot, made it, and we continued on our run. So there were some things like that we had been waiting to see this team do, and they did it, in my opinion, as far as taking control of the game and holding on to control of the game. There were still sloppy turnovers. I think 14 of our turnovers came from 10 North Carolina steals. It's just a lot of turnovers that are live ball turnovers that is allowing a team like North Carolina to get out and run. So obviously want to clean those up. Aiden Holloway got a lot of, he got a lot of kudos for how well he shot the ball as he should. Mark Sears as well. I mean, I thought the story of the game and what I feel like we're going to see with this team was Houston Millette. even though he only played 9 minutes. So watching the game at home, as it first comes on, they showed a shot of the Alabama team huddle. And the two guys leading that team huddle were Chris Youngblood and Houston Millett. Obviously, Youngblood did not get into this game. Hopefully, we're going to see him this weekend against Creighton. But Millett was all energy, all effort, played great defense, got deflections, got tips, knocked down two big threes, when he had his opportunity. And I just wanted to read this quote after the game that he had when somebody asked him about his red shirt being burned. Because just to remind everybody who may not know, he hasn't played this year. He, with Coach Oates, made the choice to redshirt. With the injury to Latrell, decided to burn that red shirt. And on that decision, what he said after the game was, in my opinion, a lot of times in society, we have what's best for me. But I feel like what's best for me in my life is what's best for the team. And anything I can do to help impact people and impact the team is what I'm willing to do. That's kind of how the decision came into play. That is that selfless love pillar that we talk about with this program. And it was exemplified on the floor. When he got tired, he took himself out. He played with max effort. Like a guy like him and a guy like Mo Diabate and a guy like Chris Youngblood, like I think those are guys that are going to come in and do the dirty work and be some of those leaders that we need that we haven't necessarily had on the floor when we've had a lead, but things get a little shaky or the wheels start falling off a little bit. So I was really impressed with him. I thought seeing some of the scenes, whether it was on the TV or whether it was from the X account for Alabama basketball after the game, as far as the Alabama cheers and the Roll Tide cheers after the game and the bench getting into it, it felt like a chemistry building win for this team as well. I was really proud of the guys. I mean, it's still funny watching, an Alabama basketball team win on the road when we've had really, 2 decades ago had really good teams that couldn't win on the road. Even if you spotted us a 20-point lead, couldn't win on the road. So to go into the Dean Dome, going into a blue blood like North Carolina and doing what you did, basically it was almost won wire to wire and had a double-digit lead for basically all the second half. Just really impressive. We'll obviously, we'll see how impressive of a win it is at the end of the year, just as far as it relates to opponent, because I agree North Carolina's got some issues, but a really good building block that I think all Bama fans wanted to see from this team.
Yeah, and I'll say this: Houston Millett needs to get some conditioning done because he played 2 possessions and he was gassed. I mean, like, and credit to him to come in and play like as hard as he can, but like he just needs and again, when you get asked, what was it, 6 days after an injury that, hey, you're gonna have to redshirt when you probably haven't been conditioning the way you should be. I'm not saying that he's not. I'm just saying when you get told, hey, you're not going to be playing this season, right? And then all of a sudden in 6 days, you're like, oh, well, now you have to play. Uh, it's a little bit different.
It's a different tempo, even though we have fast tempo in practice. It's different getting on there in a game situation, and especially in a game situation like that. I mean, that adrenaline had to be going crazy, and I would imagine that had to play into it as well. But yes, we hopefully we can see him more than 9 minutes on the floor in future games.
Um, and then the only kind of gripe I have is just the perimeter defense at times was a little bit lackluster. Aiden Holloway needs to learn how to stay in front of people a little bit, but he played exceptionally well on the defensive or offensive end. LeBaron Filan defensively, I don't know. Maybe people that are listening to this that play NBA 2K will understand what I'm talking about. There's a mechanic in the game where if you get into the passing lanes, the players just jump like they 5, 6 feet in the air and just catch any type of steal, and that's what LeBaron Filan looked like versus North Carolina. I get so mad when I play the game because I'm like, there's no way that this is realistic. And then I just saw it in the North Carolina game. So credit to him for being aware defensively of where he's at and just overall, I'm so impressed with the kid, and I'm happy we had an opportunity to interview him. Um, any additional thoughts on North Carolina?
I was just gonna say real quick, going back to what Charles was saying about he brought up the selfless love factor. I do find it kind of funny that we talked that was went hand in hand. That was a conversation from I think it was our last podcast. We talked about glue guys, and who were the glue guys on this team. And Charles, that was when you brought up the pillars of the program and the fact that now a week later, I think it was last podcast. Now a week later, we're now sitting here talking about how I think we found those glue guys. And that's a testament right there about, like you said, Charles, just what a chemistry building win. I think even if this win doesn't necessarily matter as far as strength of schedule and when we're gauging the tournament, seeding down the road, this still was I won't call it a turning point, but I will call it was definitely a time to it was a reinvigorating win for this program. It was a shot in the arm. That's what they needed right now.
It was last podcast. We were asking who are the glue guys? Where's the selfless love on this team? We were asking, is this a team that can finish off opponents? I don't know if they were listening, but they answered our questions. So we'll have to think of some tougher questions, I guess, for this Creighton game coming up, and maybe they'll listen and prove us wrong again, or just show us that yeah, they can do it.
Well, and I
Our
told you guys
rival
that some
Creighton.
players listen to the podcast, so who knows? Someone probably heard what you guys said and was like, said, "Well, we got to show these podcast guys that they don't know ball." So,
Hey, if they play like that, then like, feel free to tell me I don't know ball all day.
um, well, speaking of the next game, we have Creighton, which again, it's been about 10 days since Alabama's played. Creighton got announced that Pop Isaacs, one of their best players, is out for the season. Ryan Kalkbrenner has been dealing with some injuries. I don't think he played their last game. Um, Charles, did you do the summary
Yeah,
on this one?
yeah, I've got it right here. They're coming off a win against UNLV, but before that, they had the big win against Kansas at home. They were also in the Player Eras tournament. There was a chance that we would have played them twice this year, but they lost their first game, so don't have to worry about that. But look, Creighton's been a very good program in the Big East. McDermott's been there for a long time. I won't get into the rivalry right now, but this will be a really good game to see what we've got in a guy like Cliff going up against Ryan Kalkbrenner. He's averaging Kalkbrenner's averaging 17 points a game. Remember, he got hurt in the first half, in the first half last year, and then when he came back was a huge difference maker, and them making a second half run and ultimately winning that game last year. With Pop Isaacs out, they've also got a guard, Steven Ashworth. He's averaging about 16 points a game, shoots about 40% from three. If you foul him and he goes to the free throw line, you might as well go ahead and mark it down. He's going to make those free throws. What I'm interested with him, he's a guy that does average 6 assists a game, but he also averages about 3 turnovers a game. So I'm really hoping that our guards will really heat him up and that we can pressure him into some turnovers. He's been turnover prone. He had 6 turnovers against Kansas, even in that win. When they got beat by Nebraska and former Alabama great Jawan Gary, he had 7 turnovers in that game. And that's one thing that I'd like to continue to see from this team is how we can put pressure, and whether it's stealing the ball ourselves or forcing the opponent to throw a bad pass that goes out of bounds, how can we continue to get, negative possessions for the teams that we play against without them ever getting a shot off. So that's something that I'd like to see from our guards, of putting a lot of pressure on a guy like him. But I mean, for them, it's going to be with Pop Isaacs being out, Kalkbrenner and Ashworth are going to be the two guys that you really got to focus on, in my opinion.
I'm excited to get done with this difficult slate. Truthfully, I am so ready to get done with this.
Our next
And
podcast will just be half an hour of us all just sighing.
well,
Wiping our
Joey,
brow.
this is a big game for you.
For me, why is
Yeah,
that?
you predicted that we would lose three.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Hey, I'm gonna keep talking bad about this team so they'll keep winning so they can prove me wrong again.
Look, look, I'm
Well,
just
it
saying.
hey, I have zero problem with this team being 11-2. And watch me talk about that, and then they'll fall on their face and lose a game. I don't think that's the case, though. I think it. This bitter rivalry, spans 12 seasons, going back to the 11-12 season, was it not? In losing in that game. It's amazing that we've played this team 3 times, but it's the first time that they've come to Coleman Coliseum.
They've been avoiding
Um,
us.
yeah. I think that, last year, I know obviously, recency bias. Everybody looked to last year's game where we had 4 players score double digits and still lost by 3 on the road. But that team also had Trey Alexander. They had Baylor Shearman. Obviously, they still had Kalkbrenner then. They had a really solid game plan. This year, it's really sad to see. You really want to play opponents when they're at their best. Right now, with Pop Isaacs out, with Kalkbrenner having his injury issues, this is not the same Creighton team that we saw last year. They do have some issues. That being said, they are still a very capable and a very good basketball team. But I think they're I think Alabama does have a shot to definitely ruin my 10-3 record projection, which I think I'm not. I think I know I'm perfectly okay with. Was I the most optimistic with 10-3, or did somebody
No,
say 11 and
Charles.
2?
Charles was like, "We're gonna lose one game or something
Yeah.
like that."
I
Okay.
probably had a 13-0 out there.
I
Yeah,
think you were 9-4,
I
Christian, right? You were
was.
nine and
Yeah,
four. Yeah. Yeah.
You
I
know,
Ugh.
said 10-3 was reasonable. Um, but I was like realistically 9-4, thinking that one we were gonna get either Creighton or San Diego State.
And
And
that was also kind of hard. That also can be thrown out the window too, because we were predicting it before we even knew who the final opponent was going to be for.
yeah,
Well, we thought we knew. We thought it was going to be Notre Dame, right, when we recorded that,
yeah.
and then that kind of got thrown out the window.
And then on top of that, I kind of assumed North Carolina would be a little bit better. And what was the other one? Oh, I thought we'd lose to Houston. And Rutgers scared me because of that. So I mean, I'm not going to be disappointed. And for all the fans that were, the sky was falling because we lost to Purdue, right? Sky is falling. Alabama's terrible. They're never going to win a national championship. All of these things, right? You have an opportunity to go 11-2 in non-conference with the non-conference slate that we've had, but the sky is falling, right? Auburn looks so good. This is what I hear. This is what I've been hearing for the past month. And meanwhile, you have Alabama, who's currently ranked 7th in the AP poll, which doesn't matter, by the way, currently. Ranked 7th in the AP poll and
And Kim Palm too.
7th in Kim Pom, and it's perfectly fine. It is perfectly okay. So I think it's a big game for Alabama. I think it's I think it's a statement game for the players to show that it's not just, oh, we played North Carolina and we just wanted to beat North Carolina. It's a, hey, this is a concerted mentality change between what we showed previously and what we know now. And also, I'm interested to see if Chris Youngblood plays. Um, that's I think the big question mark that I have going into this game is whether or not he plays or not.
but
Would you guys try to rush Chris to be ready for this game, or was this a game that you think that he could probably afford to sit out another weekend?
I think if they were going to rush him, he would have played versus North Carolina.
That's fair.
Because he did warm up and was highly doubtful to play for that game. So if they wanted to rush a player, if they wanted to rush him, they would have rushed him for North Carolina. I think probably giving him that extra 10 days is probably going to help him significantly. Um, I definitely understand the point. I also see it from this perspective. You're not going to know what you have in him until conference play if he doesn't play this game. Because I don't think that the competition level after this game is big enough to kind of be able to evaluate. And you're not going to be able to evaluate him that much because it would be his first game back off injury, but at least see maybe his comfortability within the offensive system a little bit and how he looks defensively. So I almost want him to play because of that, but I wouldn't be upset if he didn't.
If he does play, then he's going to have the opportunity to play 3 games in 8 days, which I think would be good for somebody like him who's trying to get into the rotation, obviously learn from his teammates, but also his teammates learn from him as far as where he's going to be on the court, how he switches on defense, just different things like that that you can't really pick up as far as being in practice. So with the things that we have heard and what's been out there, I would expect him to play. Probably doesn't start, but I think it would be good. I think it'd be good for him to have an opportunity, like Christian was talking about, against a really good opponent to get out there and kind of feel the energy of what I expect to be a really good crowd on Saturday night too in Tuscaloosa.
Well, and another thing I didn't even think about is when do the playoff games start for football?
Not until like the 20th or the 21st.
Oh, I thought
Yeah,
it was this weekend. I was gonna say, without having a playoff game and like teams traveling or fans traveling, then the crowd might be better. But I guess it's not starting until the following week.
yeah, the 20th is the first game.
Now, I was going back and looking at our, just kind of looking through the box score of when we played at Creighton. And I thought last year's game at Creighton is where, even though it didn't go our way, we'd had the game against Purdue, I think the week before, where we played really, really well and just couldn't really close it out at the end. But this game and this performance against Creighton, which was at the time number 8 in the country, I think really gave us a lot of belief of, okay, this team could actually do something, especially if we get into a game where, our big guys like Muhammad Wagi and Nick Pringle don't pick up a foul as soon as they step on the court. Just as a reminder, McGee played 7 minutes and fouled out. Pringle did get 23 minutes in before he fouled out. But we were 4 of 22 from the 3-point line, which sounds a little bit like this year's team. But we also out-rebounded Creighton last year. And again, Kalkbrenner was out a lot of the first half when he got banged up. But I looked at this game or remember this game is like we really battled from start to finish. And while we didn't get the win that we would have wanted in this game, I feel like that team still got some confidence. So with where we are now, you should have a lot of confidence, regardless of what North Carolina is coming off of your last game against North Carolina. Now you have an opportunity to do it in front of your home fans and build that energy as you get into conference play. Because if you think about it, as far as Alabama fans just being able to go in Coleman Coliseum, while you're 3-0 in Coleman Coliseum right now, there's only really been one game where I think Alabama fans would say we really had a lot of fun and really enjoyed watching this team play. There were definitely moments against Arkansas State and McNeese State, but those games were a slog, basically, especially that Arkansas State game with how many fouls were called in that game. So an opportunity to perform in front of your home fans, get the excitement going again, and get people interested in coming out to Alabama basketball games in the future. Because from what we are seeing as far as SEC basketball, every night is going to be a challenge once we get into conference play. It doesn't matter who you're playing or where you're playing. All those games are going to be battles because this conference is so good right now.
I'm pretty sure currently they have 15 of 16 teams slated as in the NCAA tournament right now for the SEC in early bracketology, which is it's not going to end up being 15 of 16. Like that's just not going to happen. Um, I think every single opponent besides like two are quad 1 games. And the other 2 are quad 2 games. The SEC went 14-2 in ACC SEC Challenge, which I think last year, I think it was almost split because all of the home teams essentially won every game. So for Alabama, an opening game in which we kind of thought Oklahoma would maybe be like an easy entrance into the SEC schedule. Oklahoma's ranked 13th now in the country. Do I think that's an inflated number a little bit? I don't think Oklahoma is the 13th best team in the country. But Porter Moser is a good coach. They have a lot of good roster pieces. Muhammad Wagi, mentioning him, he's on the roster, but that's for discussion for another day. But point being is, it doesn't look like any game in the SEC is going to be a Missouri game of last year, where Missouri's 0 of 18. They don't. I mean, some games they're competitive, but mostly they're not. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case in the SEC this year. I think you have 9 or 10 teams ranked in the top 25. You have 5 ranked in the top 10, I believe. So it's going to be a brutal schedule, and it's a good thing that Alabama has scheduled this non-conference slate the way that they have. Otherwise, I feel like you kind of be on the back foot going into conference play, January. Sorry, my work is blowing me up right now. I apologize. I can never get away. But yeah, no, I'm excited about this weekend. I'm excited. I wish I could be down in Tuscaloosa. Unfortunately, it is the wife's birthday, and I tried to proposition
So she'll
going
be
down
out of the house.
Well, so we now have new theories. We have new theories. She's left the house in both of our losses, and we've lost. So I'm not sure if the out of the house thing works anymore. It might be she and I have to be together because we were together at the North Carolina game and we won when she's at the house and I'm at the house. We win games when we're separated. I asked her if she wanted to go celebrate her birthday in Tuscaloosa. She said no. There's no chance in
Not until they build that Sports Illustrated resort.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I get to miss the great slate of basketball this weekend to go. Oh no, I have to go spend time with my wife, but is what it is. All right, Joey, I know Charles, you're going to the game. Joey, are you going to the game?
Nope, I got the in-laws coming into town for the Coleman Christmas market, so will not be able to go down there over there, unfortunately. I'm gonna get to a daggum game one of these days. Seems like they always fall on days where I already have something planned or I have to watch it at home. But
yeah,
well, I'm not a true fan. What can I say?
I'll say this, and look, student seating comes up a lot from people on X as far as students that should be moved and stuff like that. And I get it, maybe it's not the best location. And when you're telling students to show up, they're only, they're only their seats for 4 years. But if the student section is not going to be sold out for a game like this, and I know they're trying to get people to stay in town, there's 40,000, students at Alabama. At least half of them live within the state of Alabama, and I would assume a lot of them are in Birmingham. If the student section is not sold out for this game, I don't really want to hear any more about student seats need to be moved or anything like that. I agree that they should be closer or there should be better seating, but you got to show up and you got to do your job to earn that, basically. So I'm hoping that this is a game that is going to be sold out from the student perspective. I think it will be. I'm saying that because of what I saw at Arkansas State and McNeese State, which again, I understand they're not high profile opponents and things like that, but You're on campus. We should be able to get more than 500 to 1,000 people there for any basketball game with how big the university has gotten.
Oh,
If nothing else, if you're a student, do it for Luke Ratliff. I mean, do you know how much he would have loved to have had freaking Creighton come to the Coleman Coliseum?
never would have
Like,
heard the end of it. That
yeah.
like
Do it for Luke.
and I'll say this for students that are considering or going or not. And I don't know how many students actually listen to this, but look, it's finals week. Like it's not like you're out of town. I mean, some people might be out of town. You know, finals might have ended on Tuesday for them or today for them and they would have left, right? But for people that have finals until Friday, what's spending the night one more time and going to a game on Saturday, right? And then going home after that. Like it's not like you're 2 weeks removed from being in Tuscaloosa and having to drive back to go to the game. You're already in town. You might as well go. You get to go see our most hated rival that hasn't been to Tuscaloosa in I don't know when the last time if they've ever been to Tuscaloosa.
Never. They've never been to Tuscaloosa. We played them one neutral site in that first NCAA tournament game, then both times on their court.
Like, and you know, and if you're a student and you're not happy that we didn't make the college football playoff, go let out some anger by yelling at the Creighton Blue Jays. Like that's what I'd be doing. Like
tearing pages out of your senior thesis and just hurling them.
Yeah, like go let out some stress from finals and studying and all of this. Like go use this as an outlet is what I would do. Heck, if you don't even watch basketball, go do that. Just go yell loud obscenities at Doug shows that's inevitably going to be the referee that we're going to be having on the with Terry Oglesby or what is it Chuck Lindsay? Is that the other one?
Joe Lindsay.
Joe Lindsay.
Pat Adams is more the problem, though.
Student section needs to start a "Birds aren't real" chant. Birds aren't real.
That's a good call on Doug Shows. We haven't had Doug in a while. He will probably be on the floor in stripes for this game.
That or Pat Adams, because I think Pat Adams has reffed like majority of our games this season.
Yeah, he was out in Los.
He has a spot on the Alabama plane at this point.
Yeah. They're putting him in the cargo bay because Nate hates him. But yeah, go to the game, man. Like I wish I could go. I don't think I'm going to be able to make a game until the Auburn game in February, but I'm excited to watch. I'm gonna inform the wife that when do we play on Saturday?
7:30, 8:30 your time.
Yeah, so between 8:30 and 10:30, I will not be doing birthday things, so it'll have to be before. But yeah, that's it. So as far as our schedule is concerned, I'm going to try to do a post-game space, but again, you know, convincing Sam that on her birthday I need to do a post-game space might be difficult. But I think I can convince her. So I'll stay tuned on that. Stay tuned on either mine or Crimson Crossover social media page. We might have some announcements coming later this week. Some new things in the works. So be on the lookout for that. And then we'll have a podcast recording. I think we'll probably end up doing that on Sunday. For what is it, Kent State and then North Dakota State? Is that or North Dakota?
North Dakota and then Kent State, yeah.
Yeah. Which I'm really excited about that North Dakota game.
I'm glad it's going to be on TV and not like a Flow Hoops or Peacock or anything like that.
Oh God, that was the best thing about the Purdue game, that it was the only game on Peacock.
So we'll have that going. And then we'll have post-game spaces following those. As far as a holiday schedule, when's our last game before like Christmas?
Kent State on the 22nd, and then we got South Dakota State on the 29th.
Okay. Good. So we're not going to be recording a podcast the week of Christmas. I'm just going to let everyone know. Again, family time is the most important time. And I know that probably people are traveling and all of that, that I'm just not doing that. So after the Kent State game, we'll have a post game space, and then maybe is the SEC game directly after the
Yeah. South Dakota State's December 29th, and then Oklahoma's January 4th.
Okay, is there a Sunday in between that, or is that like a week break? Or
Yeah, that's this 29th is a Sunday when we play South Dakota State, and then the Oklahoma game is that following Saturday.
all right. Well, we'll figure out that schedule whenever we get there. But just so everyone knows, we're not recording anything for the Christmas holidays. So, I guess Charles, you'll have to wear your Christmas sweater. When is
Coming
that?
out next week.
Yeah, next
I'll
week.
find my
So
Santa hat, dig it from the.
I haven't.
the
I need
closet.
to find I have an Alabama Santa hat that I need to find.
Oh,
So,
nice. Heck yeah.
but with that, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter. I think the Twitter links are in the description or something like that. Other than that, I think we're good to sign off and roll Tide.